So Apple Films, Apple TV, Apple TV Plus, Apple Studios, whatever it is, has released Emancipation in theaters on December 2nd, and it's streaming currently as of December 9th on Apple TV Plus. If you don't have a subscription to Apple TV Plus, Will Smith has partnered with them to offer 2 free months of Apple Plus subscription. That way you can see his film. I find that to be a rather sort of almost pathetic ploy to get people to watch a film. If you can't drag them there from the content of the film on its own, then really this is kind of cheap as far as I'm concerned. I lost that much more respect for Smith after seeing that Instagram post of his where he's telling people that we need to see this film. Why do we need to see this film? Why? Because it's some new historic take on slavery, or one man's journey through slavery and running away? What was the historical significance that made my people need to see this film because it's so important to our history? There is none, right? So I think it's rather absurd. I think it's egotistical. I think it's super arrogant. And I also believe that it's a sure act of just, it's delusions of grandeur and grandiosity beyond all reason that we would suggest, or Will and company would suggest, that this is a film that needs to be seen. What's this film about? You know, we're going to get to it. All right. We're going to talk Emancipation. I think just from my opening right here, you know how I feel, but I'm going to give you rationale to that. And I'm going to give you insight into how I feel about what I just watched. And we'll see. You're either going to agree or you're going to hate me. One or the other. We're going to talk about it. That Guy Talks Movies next. Welcome to That Guy Talks Movies. I am that guy that talks movies. And if you like talking movies, listen to people talk about movies and give their opinions on movies and all that good stuff, and talk about home media and collecting movies and 4K content and all that good stuff, go ahead and hit the subscribe button if you're new to the channel, and the notification bell so you know when I put up new content. I really appreciate the people who have stuck with me, the people who tune in and watch my videos. I truly appreciate you. I can't thank you enough, and I can't ever stop saying that. All right, so let's get into Emancipation. So you gotta, you know, I think about these things sometimes, and I think I've shared this with you before, where I don't know, I still haven't gotten into a groove as far as how I do my episodes, right? A big part of me just wants to always sit down and freestyle everything. And sometimes that doesn't work. Sometimes I watch the videos and I'm like, geez, I really didn't say much there, or I should have said more, or I didn't express that the right way, or I made a mistake, right? So sometimes I feel like, oh, I should have a computer and write my notes down. I should have a script, try a teleprompter. I even tried that before, and it never quite works out. With this one, Emancipation, I didn't want to miss certain things, so I did keep the notes here, and I am going to refer to them. But for the most part, I still feel like I kind of know how I feel about it, and I like to just shoot off the cuff, you know, what's happening emotionally, and then from a logical standpoint, and from a cinema standpoint, and a review critic standpoint. I don't like to say critic, but a film lover standpoint, analyzing this to a certain degree. I kind of just want to do it off the top of my head, but I do have notes. Like, let's start with that. Okay, so if you don't know, Anton Fuqua directs with a script from Bill Collage is his name, and Robert Richardson, the great Robert Richardson, who's done practically every freaking good film there is, including Django Unchained. We'll get to that in a minute. Produced by Westbrook, which is Will Smith's production company. I thought it was Overbrook. I think Overbrook was a partnership with the other gentleman, and Westbrook is just Smith on its own, but he produced it. That was nothing surprising. I knew that. And it's put out and distributed by Apple TV Films with a budget of $120 million, which I found rather shocking considering Django was made for $100 million. So many other movies. I think 12 Years a Slave was made for like $20 million, I think, something along those lines. But like so many other movies, and this has got one big star in it, and it's only Will, who got a $35 million salary. So I'm assuming most of the rest of the budget went to Robert Richardson's talent, right? That's where I'd place everything. And I think that's what they did. We'll get to that again in a second. Let's look at the log line for this film, like what it's about. If you Wikipedia this and you go and you see what plot, right? In the 1860s, the African-American enslaved Peter escapes from Louisiana to freedom. That's it, right? Now, at the start, this is where I go into, you know, the prefacing my take on the actual film itself and this particular story with that particular summary. I can just say it's an awkward place to be as an African-American man, African-American woman. All right. Any of my African-American brothers and sisters, my black brothers and sisters, my brethren, right? Everybody. There's a natural trepidation. There's a natural thing that happens going into knowing a slave picture is coming out. Another picture about slavery. First of all, how many pictures about slavery do we have? How many do we need? How much from a historical context do we need to share and tell our stories, right? Do we not need to tell our stories? Of course we do. Do we need to continue to tell our stories from a slavery perspective? And what's the best way to do it? It is a dicey, tricky sort of thing to do. And I understand that. In fact, it's interesting. While I was doing a little bit of research for this, I looked up like slave pictures. There's actually like lists, 20 best slave movies, 20 best slavery, 50 top slavery movies. I'm like, they actually rank them and call that, like, just saying those words, the 20 best slavery movies. You're not dealing with a rom-com or a horror flick. Like, it's just like, I just thought that alone was ridiculous. And again, going back to my point of going into a slavery picture, seeing a movie where you know you're going to see slave shit, right? We're going to see the brutality of slavery. We're going to see the history of this country and what took place with my people and how we were treated and the effects of slavery. You're going to see all these things. You're going to see brutality. You're going to see lynching. You're going to see hangings. In this one, you see decapitations, and you're going to see dogs being sicked on slaves. You're going to see all sorts of heinous things taking place with children and women and men. And it's disgusting. And we get it. And we've seen enough of it. We've seen enough of it, right? So going into the film, it's this natural sense of, all right, it's a slavery picture. So what are you showing me that's different? And that's what counts. That's what counts when you make a slave picture. If you're going to make a slavery movie, don't show me shit that I already know. Don't show me things that I'm well aware of. All right? Don't show me history. That's a bell. Let's just try to ignore that. I've already seen slavery at its most gruesome, or to what Hollywood has been able to produce as its most gruesome. I've seen these things, right? We can go through the list of movies where we've seen these things, right? I've seen the runaway slave movie. I've seen the movie where the good white man befriends the slave and doesn't want slavery to be around and is the good guy. And Anthony Hopkins did this and this one did that. And, it's just, I am not interested in the surface sort of historical retelling and exposure of slavery, right? It doesn't interest me at this point. Now, don't get my words, don't misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm not suggesting that the history of slavery, our history, this country's history, all of our history, white people and black people, right? This is our history. I'm not suggesting that it doesn't need to be told, and I'm not suggesting we should ignore it or sweep it under the rug because we've seen. No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, if you're going to continue to make slave pictures, you need to provide me context and you need to provide me a story that I either haven't seen before or from a perspective that I was unaware of or that I haven't seen before. Teach me something. Make something historically relevant to my already existing knowledge of the storyline, of the actual subject matter, okay? In this case, that's not what happened. This is a movie about a runaway slave. He has a family. Yes, he has a family. Okay, slaves had family. Some slaves had wives. Some slaves didn't have wives. Some slaves were together. Some slaves weren't. He had a family. The family in this film serves as nothing more than background for Will Smith's character. Will Smith is playing Peter Gordon, the guy who's whipped horribly, and a famous photograph was taken of him. We're going to get back to that in a second. But Will Smith has a family. He's separated from that family in the beginning. He's taken somewhere else and he's separated from the family in a dramatic scene of him being torn away from his kids and wife. I'm not suggesting to you that a man as a slave being taken away from his family is something that I'm making fun of or that shouldn't be an emotionally gripping scene. I'm saying it's nothing new. And I'm saying to you that the people in this film, so his wife, Charmaine, I forgot her name, Benoit, almost sounds like Sade Baderinois, but great actress, and then the kids, but they served as background. And that's because there was no real story. There's no real character. It was nothing for them to do. It was just more of like, script writing 101, give the man a family. That way he's got something to get back to, right? Give him some love interest, right? That's what that was. There was nothing else there. He gets sent to, taken away and blah, blah, blah. And it's a runaway slave movie. There's no real plan. I thought that was kind of interesting too, that he just kind of decided to that day get angry and up and leave, right? It's like, was there a plan? Was there any kind of thought put into this whatsoever? He's supposed to be an intelligent guy. He's a witty dude, whatever it's supposed to be. He didn't really think that out. Or maybe he did because he got away, right? So maybe I'm wrong there. But from a story perspective, it doesn't lend itself to be an exciting film. Now, again, I got to caution even myself. I got to think about what I'm saying. Do we want a slave film to be exciting? Do I want to see excitement in a slave film? It's a movie. At the end of the day, it's a movie. If we can cut past racial stuff, we can cut back whether a white person is watching it or a black person is watching it. We're going to feel differently by nature. I get that. But it's still a film, right? So there's still elements to that film to keep me engaged. Even if you're sharing with me a story, a theme, and a message, you need to be able to convey that message and do it in such a way that you do not lose my interest, that you do not lose my mind and my creativity, my imagination, and you should take me there. This does not work primarily because I don't know this Bill College guy. I looked him up. He's written garbage as far as I'm concerned. So I don't know how they pick this guy to write this. And it's not a racial thing. It's not a matter of a white man couldn't write a movie, although I know plenty of people who feel that way. And I think in certain instances, yeah, I don't think a white man should have written Malcolm X, for example, or directed Malcolm X as originally was supposed to happen. But it didn't, thank God. So I don't think it's so much that, because going back to Django Unchained, Tarantino wrote that and got an Oscar for it. And that was the best, this is going to sound funny, the best slave movie was Django Unchained. I am going to get into a whole thing on Django Unchained because it's one of my favorite movies, period. And I'm going to get into an entire episode of that. I keep meaning to do it. I almost want to do it in a live form, or I want to have other YouTubers or anyone join me to talk about or to argue about that film. Because I've had some heated discussions with my own people and friends about that film, and they're hating on it. Spike Lee didn't even see it, and he hated on it. I thought that was disgusting and terribly ignorant. So I'm going to get into a whole Django Unchained thing and discuss what an actual picture should do for people. And going back to my point, a white man wrote that. So in this case, I don't think it's because he's white. I just don't think it's because he has any talent. Robert Richardson photographed this film. The great Robert Richardson. This guy actually shot Django, Inglourious Bastards, Casino. Oh my God, this guy, the history, he's worked with everyone, and he's got three. He's the only person to have, I think, 3 Oscars for cinematography. Like, you've got, let me take a breath. Start to go off the rails there. I start rolling with it because I'm actually kind of heated by this movie. And in doing this review, I'm thinking of things, and I don't want to do that. So let's just back it up a little bit and let me pause. One of the other things, all right, there is no story here. I think we got that clear now. That's how I feel. I just don't think there was a script. One of the other things that I can't get past is the idea that I know that this is a very contrived project. I said that when I did the trailer reaction video. And it's Will wanting his Oscar moment. And this is prior to the slap thing, right? So he was campaigning and trying to go for the Oscar thing. It was either going to be, King Richard, or it'd be this, or a combination of whatever. However, he has his pipeline going of projects. This was on that list. And I believe this was his passion project to do a slave picture because he didn't do Django Unchained. Going back to Django. There's a lot of connection here. He didn't play Django because Django doesn't kill the bad guy at the end of the film. Spoiler alert. Django is not the one to get Calvin Candy, right? So not good enough for him. His ego wouldn't allow it. He needed to be the hero, which is total arrogance. It's total arrogance. And I don't want this to be a thing about I'm not a Will Smith fan or I hate Will Smith, because that ain't it. And I don't want this to be a situation where this particular opinion that I'm rendering and the words that I'm uttering have anything to do with the Oscar slap. Like, oh, suddenly I don't like Will Smith. Will Smith, as I said in the previous video where I talked about the trailer, I like Will Smith. I'm proud of Will Smith. I want Will Smith to keep winning. I don't even want to cancel Will Smith. I think that would be god awful. This man had a career for how many years? And he's done so much and contributed so much to our lives. Do I want to get rid of it? No. I'm talking to you as an artist, someone who appreciates film, good cinema, good storytelling, and good acting. This is not a representation of that. And this was a contrived passion project of Will Smith. Look, brother, do what you got to do to get those gold statues and get that legitimacy. I hear you, right? I'm not going to hate on that. But when I can see through it, it rubs me the wrong way, and it doesn't instill any kind of like real, I don't feel I can render an opinion 100% artistically, because I feel that the actual product wasn't born out of pure artistry. If that makes any sense. So here we have a slave picture with a runaway slave who's wrestling with alligators. I actually wrestled with an alligator. I mean, did he actually, from the Ali role, did he actually like at some point say, hey, you know what? I want to wrestle with an alligator. Yeah. Okay. Outside of the cinematography, outside of Robert Richardson's work, which I don't think was stellar. I'm just going to say that, right? I almost feel weird saying something against Robert Richardson, right? But I don't think it was bad, but I don't think it was anything so incredible. I wouldn't put it with his greatest work. I wasn't a fan of it's not black and white, by the way. There's a lot of people saying, oh, I like the black and white. It's not black and white. It wasn't black and white. It was desaturated, and it had its moments where they allowed certain colors to come through, mostly greens and browns. It was not a black and white film. But yeah, so we talked about the fact that slavery movies are, whatever. And again, story. Is this one man's perspective, a group perspective, family perspective, a race of people's perspective? What am I supposed to get with in this film? And please don't tell me that it was Will Smith's incredible performance, because we all know that the whole "you won't break me, they won't break me" speech was kind of like, you can see it during the Oscars when they go, and for best actor, Will Smith, and they show the little reel, that little clip. That was that little moment right there. You can almost see Will orchestrating that with Fuqua, right? And like the whole thing, and like, that's going to be the speech that they're going to use to get you your Oscar. Yes. That's the one. Let's use that one. How many takes and how many clips? And in the editing room, what did it look like when they were trying to get that together? Because he doesn't say much through the movie. It's not a heavily dialogue-driven film for Will. So again, it's Will pouting and doing the same look that he does whenever he needs to play a role that's not laughing and being charming. He pouts, and that's his serious look. The lip thing, you see that? I mentioned that to one of my friends, and they laughed because they never noticed it, and now they notice it every time they see his serious films. So I'm not off on that. This film suffered from being a typical slave picture that showed a whole bunch of brutal horrors of slave. They didn't need to show certain things, right? Do me a favor. Tell me, if you're making a movie and you want it to be about this man and that particular story, I need to get into that particular character. I need to feel that character. I need to understand that character, and I need to take the ride with that character. That did not happen here. The few moments that Will is trudging through the swamps and in Louisiana and trying to do what he's to get to Baton Rouge and to get to Lincoln's army, and all of the stuff he endured was not that well done to make me go, oh my God, that was memorable. This is a totally forgettable film in every category. The only reason, and I'm gonna keep it real, the only reason I've seen some reviews where people are praising it, I'm like, and this is my people praising it. I'm like, are you kidding me? What are you praising? A slave? We all need to see these black slave movies because we need to band together. Yeah, it's emotionally. What? There was nothing new here that you haven't seen. Somebody challenge me on that. Go ahead, get in the comments. Go ahead, get in the comments if you want. And let me know specifically why this slave picture was so incredible to watch and so riveting, and why we need to know the history. Let's get to that. Let's get to that right now. So this is a story with a role that Will is playing, Gordon, the whipped slave. Famous photo that made its way around the world in terms of showing the atrocities associated with slavery, the whipping of a man's back, and the disgusting keloid scarring of this man's back, right? So that's the story. It's the guy from it's not the story. It's not the story of the photograph. It's the man in the photograph. This is his story. So if you remove the photograph part, right, and say this is the guy that was in the photograph, if you remove that part, it's a story about a runaway slave. That's it. There's nothing else compelling there. There's nothing else there. Now, let's for a moment, let's allow our filmmaker minds and creativity to just cycle with me for a second. Go with me. Let's say we write this a little bit differently. Let's say it's about that guy, but let's embellish a little bit, right? Because you have to for film. Even when you're doing something that's based on a true story, there's got to be embellishment in order for it to work in terms of a screenplay and a film. Go with me. How about Peter did something along the way, like he freed 20 women from such and such whatever, or there was like 6, something going on. He killed like 10 plantation owners and stopped a little girl from getting whooped and stopped somebody from getting raped. And along the way on his trails, he made his way through, but he couldn't take people with him because he was on his own and he had to get to where he was going. Like, give me a story. Give me a story. Make that guy likable, lovable. Make me root for him. Because if you're asking me to root for him because he's a slave who's been separated from his family and he's a slave and he's trying to get free, by nature, I'm rooting for him. I understand that. Now that might sound, maybe that sounded confusing. Let me see if I could break it down. Obviously, the nature of the film calls for and elicits an emotional response of pain, suffering, and empathy, right? It's natural. There's no way you could, it's like watching a Holocaust picture and not immediately feeling like, just knowing it's a Holocaust picture, just knowing you're going to see ghettos and you're going to see Jewish people being like, seeing that, you don't have to know the story yet. You just have to know that's a painful situation in a period of time in our history in this world, and just disgustingness that happened to people in our world. So by nature, the subject matter elicits that emotion. As a film, this particular character did nothing for me. Nothing. So I tell you, and I challenge you to tell me that the story was so gripping, that the acting was so gripping, the plot, the script itself. I don't even think the score was that good. Who did the score? I don't even know. I should look it up. If it's Hans Zimmer, I'm going to smack myself. I don't think Zimmer would do it. I'm also, going back to production people, because I'm talking about Hans Zimmer. We're just freestyling right now. Like, the idea was a $120 million picture, and there was one star. Pretty much, right? I'm not saying the other people weren't great, but let's just be honest. For a Hollywood picture, whether it's Apple Films or not, it's still a studio in a $120 million budget. You've got a fuck ton of money, and you only had one star in this, like one name star. I don't know. Look, this just was not a good film. I watched it this morning. I already had a subscription to Apple TV Plus, but thank you, Will. In case I didn't, I probably wouldn't have watched this if I didn't have a subscription. Yeah, I wouldn't have taken the 2-month thing. Okay. This was not a good film. This is nothing memorable, nothing I'm going to purchase. Let's go even further. How many people actually collect slave movies? For what? I'm not a fan of putting on a slave movie and watching it over and over and over again. The only one would be Django Unchained. And I know some of you are scratching your head at that right now. And I'm glad, because I'm going to do a video on it, and it might be a 2-3 hour video. Like I said, I'd like to do a live. I invite anyone watching this who wants to debate me or talk about Django Unchained or talk about Emancipation. I invite you. Let me know in the comments. And if it's worth my time, I will set something up and we will get together and we will do the double, triple screen thing, and we will all talk. My brothers and my sisters out there, my fellow YouTubers, anyone, black, white, I don't care. Let's talk about it, because this was a slave picture that's not worth watching again. There was no real compelling reason for me to waste 2 hours and change whatever it was. And I'm disappointed. It's got nothing to do with Will Smith is no good and as a person, and I don't like Will Smith. Got nothing to do with that. This was a mediocre performance at best with terrible material, not a very good script to work with at all. Nothing that I haven't seen before. And I think actually it was a little excessive in the whole heads on the pike thing and the decapitation and all that. So I think it might even been a little excessive, considering, are you telling a story about how brutal slavery was? Or is that just a natural part of a slave script? If we're going to do a slave movie, we're going to have to show that slavery was really bad. Well, yeah. Well, how bad should we show it? Well, we should probably put some scenes so people understand that it was terrible. So try to outdo each other. Let's see how much we can do. Let's get dogs ripping people up. Yeah, didn't Tarantino do that? Yeah, he did, but we can do it as well. What about decapitation? Did Tarantino do decapitation? Did anyone do 12 Years a Slave? Did McQueen do any of that? No, you know what? Let's do this. Bullshit. Look, that's it for me on That Guy Talks Movies. I've clearly expressed myself. This is not worth seeing. You're going to probably see it anyway. Why? Because it's a black slave movie. And you might feel bad if you don't see it. I feel someone like not watching a Medea film, somehow you lose your black card. I got to watch a black slave picture and I have to like it, or I don't know. Look, let me know in the comments below what you think about this movie. I could probably go on for another hour, but I'm just going to cut this. All right. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this film. If you're not a subscriber, go ahead and subscribe if I haven't made you leave already. All right? Hit the like button on the way out if you like this video. And hit the thumbs down video if you don't like it. I could take it. This was not a good film. Will's performance is nowhere near worthy of an award whatsoever. It's funny because he, going back to him, making this film for his own benefit, he sabotaged his own chances with the Oscar thing. He sabotaged himself. I'm done. Anyway, that's it for me on That Guy Talks Movies. I will see you on the next one. Again, subscribe, like, don't like, leave comment, and I'll see you on the next one.